Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll get started. First of all, thank you so much for coming out tonight. We're happy to see you in person and live, and hopefully we'll have some good conversations and time for lots of questions and answers to help you with you and your child's college search process. So my name is Alan Kazarian. I am the guidance director here at the high school, and I have with me two counselors. You may have seen Kurt Lawson was in the foyer, and Rachel Payne is one of our guidance counselors. And then we have a special guest this evening is Mr. Todd Weaver. He's the president of Strategies for College, and he's a former, worked in the financial aid office at Northeastern University. So he's going to give us a good sense of what's going on in the financial world. So while the students are busy searching for their colleges and making lots of fun choices and coming home with lots of names, the parents are probably dizzy trying to figure out how they're going to pay for all this and give their child a positive and hopefully a good choice at school for their child. I just want to begin, we'll take a quick look at, there's a handout that we prepared for you. So there's a lot of information that parents and students can go to. The guidance counselors are meeting with all juniors, all right? So we met with them in groups. We gave out a lot of information. We also gave students a book, a guide planning for college. And we have extras, I don't have them here, but after we finish our last group tomorrow, I'll have some extras if somebody would like one, you can email me. But we're giving juniors lots of information about this whole search. It's pretty daunting, but it's going to also be exciting. I guess my first question is, how many of you, this is your first time with a child going to college? Okay, so we got a lot of new faces, so thank you. And maybe those who have been through it can add to the discussion as we go forward. You may have some good insights to share with the other parents as well. In a minute, Ms. Payne will talk about Naviance is on this program. All students at Falmouth High School have access to a Naviance program, and that is the college and career planning tool that we use. And then eventually, in senior year, the students will use this Naviance to send all of their college applications. So it goes through the computer, and then the counselors add their transcripts and their recommendations. And we're going to give you a lot more detail about that in the fall. But we're going to introduce it tonight. We've introduced it to juniors already, and it's open to them to use at all times for searching and preparing for college. There's a program called Big Future. This might be good for parents. So while the students are using Naviance, you could use Big Future, which is put out by the College Board. That has tremendous amount of information on how to research colleges, find information about colleges, and then you can start making your own. Hopefully you make a spreadsheet or something where you'll start listing all the characteristics, the qualities and things that you're looking for in a school. But I would recommend Big Futures. You'll hear us talk about MIFA. Excuse me, they have tremendous resources for financial aid. They have college search programs as well. I highly, highly recommend parents go onto the MIFA website and become friendly with that. In the fall, we will do webinars. We will send you information on webinars that are being run by MIFA regarding financial aid and the applying for the FAFSA, the free federal application that all students will need to do for college financial aid. Khan Academy, students will be familiar with this from their studies in school. I believe the math department uses it, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So Khan Academy has their own SAT practice. So students who will be interested in taking SATs can use the Khan Academy site. The registration site for the SATs, Mr. Lawson will talk about that in a minute. Ncaa eligibility site. If any student is interested in playing Division I or Division II college sports, you must register through the Eligibility Center. That's a very important conversation. I recommend that those students meet with their counselor before they do the online registration. There's been historically a little issue with some of our CP1 classes with the Eligibility Center. We've now switched to all CP, so it shouldn't be too bad, but I strongly recommend that students meet with their guidance counselor before registering in the NCAA. On May 24th, I'm going to invite any junior who's interested to come on a bus with us, with the guidance counselors. We'll go to Bridgewater State University. We'll do a little tour of that campus very briefly, but they're going to have a huge college fair. It's called the National Admissions Council Association Fair. And students are invited to go to that. And we'll take a limited number of students. We had a college fair here in the fall that hopefully was productive for a lot of juniors, but if that wasn't the case, or if you still want to look for more schools and talk to representatives, the best thing in this business, and I think you'll hear from the professionals, is the face-to-face, the eye-to-eye, the handshakes, and the getting to know you. The counselors, the admissions reps rather, who are at these fairs, are usually the ones who are reading your child's application when they apply. So knowing them, getting to know them, students emailing them after their meetings and so forth, and building that relationship is really key, especially to your top name school, your first choice schools rather, and maintaining that relationship and hopefully getting an acceptance out of it. As always, we encourage you to contact counselors, and this goes to parents as well. You know, please email your child's counselor or call us or whatever. They'll be happy to set up a meeting with you if you need to. If you get to a point where I'm going on my mind, I don't know what to do, or I have a lot of questions, then, you know, certainly we're here to work with you. We're here to work with all of the students, and we're here to work with the parents as well. And then finally, this is a message to the students in the room. You may not realize this, but your junior year grades are pretty much the last set of grades that will go out in the fall, especially if you applied early decision or early action. Our quarter one grades this year were not released until the first week of December, and many students had already applied to college by that date. So FYI, keep up your grades, do the absolute best that you can, and colleges will be very impressed, I think, by you and by how you end your junior year. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Payne, who is going to walk you through a little bit of the Naviance program.
Good evening. I'm just going to get my PowerPoint set up. Give me 1 second. I don't know why they put it all the way over here. But while I'm doing that, I will just go off script for a half second here and say, I want to really reiterate what Mr. Kazarian was saying about getting to know your advisor, or getting to know, sorry, not the advisor, the admissions reps at those events. My little sister is a shining example of that. She really wanted to go to Mass College of Pharmacy and Health Science, or MCP, and it was her top choice, really competitive school. So she met that person. She made sure to get her email. Anytime that she went to Boston, she took a picture next to the sign and sent it to her with a big shining face. And actually, I don't want to promise that this is going to happen to everybody, but she was nominated for a scholarship that the only way you can get nominated is if your admissions rep puts your name forward. So you never know. It might be helpful. And she did actually get that scholarship, so that was great. All right. I love using a computer that's not your own. That works? It works, yay. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Naviance Juniors, especially my juniors. I see a few of you guys. Hi. We went over this in the last 2 weeks. Every student has access to Naviance. Little trick, please access it from the Falmouth High School website. My students have seen if you try to just Google Naviance, you get the corporate site, you can't find it, it asks for a code, it's a whole nightmare. Go to the Falmouth High School website, there's a link for students which has a ton of good information beyond just college searching. This is one of them. And as you go in here, you want to click on that big single sign-on button. There is no login information. It uses your Google account. However, that also means that parents don't necessarily have the access we would like you to have. We're sorry. But if you go through the same steps, right before you get to this page, it does say guest. The word guest, all undercase or lowercase, that is the password. You can get limited access, but I recommend just doing this with your student and taking a look at it together. So Naviance is useful for a couple of different things. One, as juniors, this is where you're going to get a lot of information about the colleges themselves, being able to compare and contrast different schools that might be a good fit for you, learning about schools that you didn't know the names of. We live in New England, we've got amazing schools here, but there's a lot around the country in case you want to study someplace else. And then in your senior year, you're going to list where you're actually applying to, and the counselors are going to use Naviance in order to submit letters of recommendation. Our letter that we write, this is where the transcripts go. In about this time in your senior year, this is also where you'll be using this for scholarships. We post all of our scholarships, and we give out like $500,000 a year in scholarships. You're going to find those, all the applications here on Naviance. Want to see what it looks like? like that. So this is just the entry page, and if you notice all the way at the top, I don't know if the curtain's covering it, there's home, self-discovery, careers, college, and planner. If you want to learn more about, let's say, I know I want this job, what does that entail? You can also do what I call backwards design. You can say, here's the career I want in the future. This is the type of major or degree that I would need. Here are the colleges that offer it. How do I get it? So you can work backwards down the line, timeline-wise. If you're not really caring about where you go to school, but you know that end point, using that careers tab can be really useful. If you want to look at just the colleges, so for my kids in the audience that we did this just today, we just typed in a college name right at the top. I went to Umass Amherst. I think most of my kids looked at that at least at one point. I think I've got Bridgewater on here as well. What else did I say up here? Oh, so I'll show you my favorite part here. Gives you a lot of good information about the college. It's usually got some photos. This is all going to be about Bridgewater. We noticed down here it tells you about the acceptance rate, it tells you about the graduation rate. Don't look at the 4-year graduation rate, just look at the 6-year. Almost everybody takes a little extra time, it's okay. It'll tell you roughly based on your family's income about how much it's going to guesstimate you would cost, or that college will cost you. But the part I like is this little bar over here that says scattergrams. That's my favorite. It looks like this. These are all Falmouth High School students between 2009 and 2000, I think at this point it was 2020, but now it's up to date as of 2021. These are all our students who have applied, and whether or not they got it. At the bottom of the chart, it's their SAT scores, which Mr. Lawson will talk about in just a few minutes. And at the top, I don't know, Cora, x-axis, y-axis, I can't remember. One of those, it's the GPA. So your student, once they have taken an SAT or a PSAT score, or received a score, will have their own circle on here that shows where they fall. Or if you know what their GPA is, you can kind of guesstimate an SAT score and see if you fall within that pack. Now keep in mind, these are from 2009, so there's some trending that happens here. So if you fall way outside the pack, come have a conversation with your counselor. But this is a really good tool to say, is this school a reach for me? Is this school a realistic expectation of me getting in? Is this a safety school for me? That's about it on that one. All right, those are my slides. Any questions real quick about Naviance before we move on? Yes?
So how do you tell if it's safety school or what you just said?
Sure, so let's imagine that my pointer finger here, imagine I landed right about here, where that shadow is. If I was in this spot, I'm kind of below, like my SAT score, pretty strong, but my GPA is a little low. This might be, I might need to work on some things here. It may not be guaranteed to get in, versus if I was up here in the pack, much more likely that I'm gonna get in. I'm sorry, this is not the best view. And if I fell way over here, let's say I had a really high GPA, well, my SAT scores weren't great. Okay, so maybe you gotta work on it. Maybe you wanna do an interview. Maybe you wanna find other ways to show that why you're a good fit for that college, instead of just throwing in the application and hoping for the
But
best.
students with those numbers, the checks got accepted.
Yes, green check means accepted, red X means denied, and the purple circle means they were put on a wait list. Good question.
It's good to see, the different schools when they.
Yeah, so because I just screen grabbed this and sent it here, I only have this one school to show you, but I like having kids go to something like Umass Amherst and seeing just the massive display of all of those X's and all those check marks, mostly check marks. And then schools that are like Boston College, where we have a lot of kids that apply, but they're very competitive, so you can kind of see that trending upwards of those nice high GPAs that they're asking for. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, sorry, this may be a silly question. I know you said like transcripts and recommendations for this. Is this also where you do all of that?
No, that is a great question though. So the question was, is this the Common App, or is this connected at all to the Common App? It is connected in that when we submit our transcripts, when we submit our letters of recommendations, or the teacher submits their letter of recommendation, this talks to the Common App, but it is not the Common App. So your student will be signing up for the Common Application, which is, if you're not familiar with it, a really great tool. It has, what, 3,000 schools, I think, almost at this point that are using it, around there. Meaning, very likely, one or many or all of the colleges that your child will be applying to will be using the Common App. You fill out all that basic information one time, which is lovely, and then there may be additional questions for each college, but you're going to be submitting one massive amount of information and then just attaching other schools. So you could say, all right, I want to apply to Bridgewater, I want to apply to Fitchburg, and I'm going to apply to, another college named Umass, all at the same time, and you're still just filling it out all the bulk of it one time.
And then uploading it into Naviance.
Yes, connecting it to Naviance, which is something that we do to help our students out. It's basically just about 4 clicks, and the two talk to one another, which is very easy. So if a student adds a school onto their Common App, it shows up on Naviance on our end. You don't have to do that until senior year. Last call, we'll do questions at the end, but yes. Good question. What does it mean to be put on a wait list? It means they liked you, but they didn't have enough spots available. You know, you have a chance, but each school takes a different number off of the wait list, number of students off of the wait list, depending on the year. So you might look at a school that gets 40,000 applications, and they only accept 4,000, but they may say, sorry, my numbers are all off here. They get 40,000 applications, they're going to actually take 4,000 students, but they might send out 6,000 acceptances. And some more of those might actually be on the wait list. That's saying that you might get into 3 or 4 schools, you're not gonna go to all 3 or 4. So they know that number is gonna go down. And some people may say, yeah, I'm not actually going to the school even though I was accepted. So then they start pulling off of that wait list to say, hey, we're gonna take these 50 kids.
Okay, we can move on.
Thank you.
You. Okay. Hello, everyone. Mr. Lawson. So I get to talk about standardized testing, which was always my favorite part about going to college, and probably a lot of other folks as well. The Scholastic Aptitude test, the SAT, is the most commonly known and probably most widely used test. It has just been completely revised. You've probably seen this in the news, but that's not coming for a couple of years. So we still have the old format, which is 3 sections. It's critical reading, writing, and math. The scores range from 200 to 800. There was an optional essay. They have done without that. They've discontinued that. They've also discontinued subject tests. May 7th, Saturday, May 7th, it's going to be offered here at Falmouth High School. And you need to register soon. You need to register by April 8th, okay, without having to pay a late fee. There's a competitor of the SAT, and that's called the ACT exam. This exam has 4 sections. There is a reading, English, math, and a science section. It's geared towards students that are very strong in science. The way the test is formatted, the questions will present a set of data, present some information to you, and then ask for you to make some judgments based on that information, okay? That is available, that's going to be offered on June 11th, not at Falmouth High School, however, and you'd need to register by May 6th for that. Now, the best news of all, these standardized tests, there's been a growing number of colleges going test optional over the years. COVID and the difficulty with folks getting in to sit for a test has really exacerbated this to the point where right now, for our students who applied to college this year, I do not know of a school that required test scores. They were basically all test optional. A few schools would not accept test scores at all. Now, in looking around now for the next application cycle for when your students will be applying, I haven't found a school that says definitely they're going to require scores yet. Umass Amherst, I know for a fact they're looking to become test optional forever. All of the other Umass schools also are test optional going forward. So What test optional really means, a lot of times this is misunderstood. Basically, if those scattergrams that we were looking at, these are a great way of determining whether or not you should send your test scores. If your GPA is above the average accepted student you see in that scattergram, you really don't need that too much, okay? If, let's say comparatively, your test scores are even better than your GPA might have turned out. This would be rare, I would think, for a student nowadays. Usually I see the opposite. But if your test scores improve your application, then by all means send them in. A student will never be penalized, however, for not sending in test scores. Okay, that's a key point. Many students will say, yeah, what if I don't send them in? Are they going to look badly at me? Are they going to think I did poorly on the exam? No, that is not the case. That's what we hear time and time again. Okay, so it's totally test optional. Over the next couple of months, we'll be bringing your students in for one-on-one meetings, all of the guidance counselors with all of our students. If parents would like to be included in that meeting as well, absolutely, as Mr. Kazarian mentioned, give us a phone call, send us an email. We'd love to meet with you as well. Put everyone's minds at ease. We've done this many, many times with lots of students. And it should be a fun, exciting experience. We want to give our students as many options as possible. College may not be the first choice for your student. It might be a branch of the armed services. It might be a trade school. We can help you with any of these paths. So reach out to us if we can help in any way. Yes?
If your child isn't a good test taker, and SATs are optional, is it suggested that they still take the SAT or not even take it?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, it's nowhere near as important as it was. If the student has any idea of the schools they're looking to apply to, they should talk to their guidance counselor. If we know all of those schools are test optional and it really doesn't seem to be the necessary, then I would say forget it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was saying we could call the admissions offices at any of these colleges as well. Yes, either. Yes?
You mentioned that the ACT was more science. Is that the content is more science, or just the way the questions are asked? Because that's very different. Because that's a different thing.
Yes. There is a science section in the exam. And the way it's formatted seems to be better for students who have a science kind of way of thinking, and the fact that it presents you a set of data and then it asks for your observations based on that data.
Is that for all the other parts as well?
It is, yes. For all of the ACT, it's formatted that way.
But only one out of the 4 parts or 5 parts is science?
Only one of the 4 is
4
science.
And
Yes.
what about the SAT?
Correct.
No science?
No science. No science. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Are SAT scores tied to any scholarship or merit-based money towards school?
That's another great question. Most colleges that I've seen over the last year say no. They will be considered for any scholarships based on their transcript. But again, as you get a better feel for what specific colleges your student is looking at, I would definitely go to those websites and ensure that. Yes. See. Okay. We're good? All right.
Go insert slides too. So my slideshow will only be about an hour and a half. You guys are all comfortable? Just kidding. Okay. Everyone usually gets a kick out of this. A little comedy around student debt. Makes you feel any better, your grandparents are still paying off their debt. I hear that too often. It's not as funny as it looks here. But, you know, the idea, good thing you're here tonight, because a lot of what I'm going to talk about is just how the college funding process works today. And I'll give you some pointers on some of the college admission aspects of it too, because admissions and financial aid are typically in separate offices at a college, but their oversight is run by the VP of Enrollment Management. So the VP of Enrollment Management is the person who basically pulls the strings on who gets in, who gets money, who doesn't get money. It's all about building a class. And you know, one of the things I want to tell you all right now, first thing you should do is throw the word fair out the window. This is not a fair process. Just understand that going in. You'll be a lot happier. So, why do people even want to go to college today? Well, a lot of reasons around perhaps finding jobs that pay a little bit more, have social aspects, become a young adult, lots of things that come with the camaraderie of going to college. Usually it's 3 reasons: learning, kinship, credentials. This is a quote from a New York Times financial columnist who wrote a pretty good book last year, Paying for College. Pick up. But what seems to get in the way of all of this? A lot of fear, misunderstanding, guilt from parents and students. It's going to cost a lot. We haven't had a chance to save a lot of money. How are we going to do this? And there's also the snobbery factor. Are we looking at, is my student looking at the right school for the name brand? I want that bumper sticker on my car. Let's go back to the job front for a minute here, because I think this is important. A lot of people look at college today as a step towards employment, obviously, as opposed to just knowledge. And some of the things that employers are looking for can be found in all sorts of college graduates. You don't have to go to business school to get a job. If you like business, great, but don't feel like you have to be forced to go down one track just to get a job after college. Employers want people who can speak and write in complete sentences, who can be critical thinkers, who can manage people and projects. Those are students who can do just fine in life being an English major at a liberal arts college. So it's important for you as a student, and parents here too, encourage your student to follow what they want to pursue, because all the good stuff will come later. If you're passionate and happy about what you're studying, that's going to be a good outcome. Let's talk a little bit about how the admissions process works. There are really 2 components that colleges are considering students. One of them is the academic fit. I know there's always the outliers of the athletics and special talents. We'll skip that for right now. But is the student going to have the academic qualifications to get in and be a successful student? Second thing, in case you didn't know, colleges are businesses. They want to know how much discounting do they have to offer a certain student or cohort of students in order to build a class that's going to give them the tuition revenue to keep the lights on at the school. Now, what are they looking for? What was said in the previous presentations is accurate. Strong grades, good curriculum, test scores if you happen to take them, if you want to perform well there. But you can see here that in the National Association of College Admissions Trends, colleges that were surveyed said the most important aspect are the grades, and grades in the college prep classes, the tougher classes, the honors, the AP, whatever your high school offers. And then it drops precipitously. So if you happen to be doing an extracurricular, around 6% is considerable importance there. So it's really the grades, the grades, the grades. And what is a good grade? Well, I pulled this from the profile of a high school about an hour from here. And my student has a 4.0. We all used to think 4.0 is great, right? Well, at this high school, it's not so great, because they're actually on a 6-point scale. So be mindful of how Falmouth and your profile works. You guys publish the school profile on a 4-point scale? Okay. So that's something
Unweighted, we have unweighted.
unweighted, okay. Every high school is different. So it's important for you to know how your grades are going to play out with the school profile, because the school profile form gets sent to the colleges along with the grades. That's how the colleges know what kind of environment you're going to school in. But again, overall GPA doesn't matter as much as what kind of grades you got in the classes you took, especially the 5 core subjects. Most colleges want to see students take 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 4 years of science, 2 years of language, but if you're looking at highly selective colleges, you really need to be closer to 3, maybe 4 years of language, just because everybody else is, so the competition is that tough. You just need to be aware of what kind of schools you're looking at. How many filled out their applications on a typewriter? We don't do that anymore, do we? And the rotary phone, you guys remember that? I think that, and this is my personal opinion from doing this for about 15, 16 years now as an independent counselor, the REACH target safety methodology of looking at colleges is kind of antiquated. By definition, if a student gets into a REACH school, that means they're in the bottom quartile of the class. They will struggle. They won't get the financial aid they need to get through in 4 years. They may not graduate in 4 years. It might take 5. That's pretty expensive when you add another year. They might transfer because they don't fit in. I know there are always the unicorns that do very well in that situation, but they're few and far between. And then you got the other end of the spectrum on the safety side. And for me personally, I have not met a student who's happy going to a safety school. So in my opinion, it's really important to look for target schools. Get a great list of schools where your student is going to be in that middle to upper half of the typically admitted student body. And that's where your student's going to find happiness, success, getting in, fitting in, getting out. It's not just about getting into college. It's about getting out of college. Right? This is a lot of money, and you want to do it in as efficient manner as possible. So, what should you do? Fish in the right part of the lake. Go look at schools that want you, not just schools you want. Follow the money. It's important to look at some of the historical data that's out there. The National Center for Education Statistics, through the Department of Education, has a pretty good list of, I think it's the past 4 or 5 years of typically granted scholarships, gift aid, what type of student debt people graduate with. You can dig up some of this information well in advance of applying to a college, so you know what you're facing.
Where did you say that was again?
The National Center for Education Statistics website. It's, College Navigator. The College Navigator is the sub-website within there that you can type a school name in and get a lot of this information. I don't recall, but does Naviance also have financial information on the schools?
It has
Some, okay. So you might want to cross-reference both softwares, if not more. You know, what I think is really important as you're starting this search is not just the academic and personal fit, but also the affordability. I think it's really essential families talk to their students about the money. What do you have saved for college? What are you going to use for cash flow? Who's going to take on debt, the student, the parent, both? You know, these are all good conversations to have up front and be realistic about your choices. Then, once you know what the numbers are that you can afford, then you can start finding schools that fit that dollar amount or come close to it. And then you want to also have the personal fit, because happy students are successful students, right? So if you want to be at a college that has Big Ten football on every Saturday, then you know that's going to be part of your search, right? All right, so I wanted to talk briefly about the federal financial aid form. Many of you may have heard, but many of you may have not heard yet, that the federal government is changing the formula for the financial aid form in a couple of years. It's going to kick in the 2024 to 2025 academic year. So anybody who has sophomores, you're going to be the first class facing this. Questions are dropping from 108 down to 36. It's a good thing. The selective service and drug-related conviction questions are being removed, so that's making it smoother. If your family earns less than $60,000 a year, there's something called a simplified needs test, which eliminates any assets you might have from consideration. For families of separation or divorce, when child support is involved, it's now going to be considered an asset, which is assessed at a much lower rate than income. Persons outside the nuclear family, for example, grandparents, can now contribute to college without it being detrimental to the student's financial aid eligibility. Today, right now, if a grandparent contributes, it could be detrimental to the student's financial aid at a 50% hit. So if a grandparent gives $10,000, that next year the student's financial aid eligibility could be reduced by $5,000. So they could lose a grant that they might have already had. So it's important to be careful about the timing of when family members help. But that's going to go away with the new formula. Some of the bad things. Right now, if you have 2 in college, your contribution is cut in half, and half goes to each student. With this new formula, they're no longer going to give you that discount, which is very bad. So hopefully in the next year, before they're actually putting this bill in place, they're going to talk about this a little more and fix it. But that could be a problem down the road for families with multiple students in college at the same time. For students with divorced or separated parents, the custodial parent is currently the one you want to have with the lower income, but in the future they're going to ask for the family member, or parent rather, who has the more financial support for the student. We have no idea yet what this is going to look like as a formula because nothing's out there yet. So, sorry to scare you and not give you any numbers, but that's something to be aware of as we're going forward. All right, so how many of you want to go into guidance and ask this question? Please make sure we have at least 3 financial liability schools on the list. And my parents and I want to go into as much debt as possible. This is a reach school. If you're looking for money, you should not be applying to reach schools. If you have money, apply wherever you want. But be very careful if you're looking for money. Here's why. So remember when I said earlier, enrollment managers sit above admissions and financial aid? This is what they play with. This is a very simplified grid, but an enrollment manager is going to say, okay, all these students got in, now I've got to put them in different buckets. The students who got in, there are going to be some who were our top academics, our top lacrosse player, our top violinist. Whatever we wanted this year as a top value candidate goes in that top row. Then, they start to fill in the second rank, then the third and the fourth. The fourth, this bottom row, are the students who got into their reach school. When you look at the columns, the families that can afford to pay full price are on the left. Families that can afford 50 to 75% are in the second column and so forth. These are the students over here on the right-hand column who might be Pell eligible on the lower income side. And where do you not want to be on this chart? The red boxes. What happens is students who are in that top row are going to get the funding they need, whether they need it or not, to come to that school. They're going to entice those students to come with scholarships and grants. As you come down, the money starts to go down a little bit lower, but when you get down to the bottom row, this is where students are going to be gapped significantly in financial aid. Now, what does gapped mean? If a college has a sticker price of $50,000 a year, and the family's expected contribution is $10,000 per year, that's a gap of 40. In theory, you'd want the college to cover that $40,000 with financial aid. But if a student falls down here and the college has no guarantees of covering 100% of financial need, they might offer a Stafford loan at $5,500. So that student got in and was gifted a loan of $5,500. So they have to come up with 10, and they get $5,500, so $15,500. Where's the other 30 coming from? That family's going to have to go deep into debt to send their child to that school. So this is why you need to avoid being in the bottom quartile. This is an actual email that I got from Drew University, a marketing email. Really great liberal arts school in New Jersey. But I highlighted some of the language in red there. If you're in the top 1/3 of the applicant pool, you're going to get money. What does it not say on there? If you're not in the top 1/3, how much do you get? Nothing. Why is it so difficult to figure out? Well, maybe it's because we're asking the wrong questions or not explaining things right. The minds of babies, right? Nobody teaches this correctly. You know, MIFA does a pretty good job at giving you an overview of how to fill out the form and some of the information there. But I love doing this as community service because I think coming from the inside of a financial aid office, I'm able to talk to families about how different it is for everybody. There's no standardization. So this is why it's important to start running your numbers now before your student has chosen schools that may not turn out to be financially viable. I'm going to go through this and just show you briefly. The financial aid formulas are set up to create what's called a federal methodology, EFC, and an institutional methodology, EFC. The EFC is the expected contribution. Don't you love that word, contribution? As if this were a voluntary event. Parent income in the upper left is the driving factor in the financial aid formulas. You can see that after a family makes about $34,000, they then add the $9,300 and then take 47% of available income above that. And put that in as the formula and say, hey, family's making 100 grand. What's that? So $55,000, half of that, $27,000 is going to be an expected contribution from that family just from income alone. That's a nice car, 27 grand, right? Well, used to be a nice car. Parent assets are assessed at a maximum of 5.5% roughly. I usually see 3 to 4%. But it goes to show that saving for college is not a bad thing. It's not going to be hit very hard. Student income, on the federal formula, a student's allowed to make $7,000 before any assessment. On the institutional formula, which say Providence College would use, Boston College, Northeastern, those types of schools are going to use the institutional methodology. If the student doesn't work, the college still expects them to come up with a minimum of $1,800, usually $2,000 a year. So it's better for the student to have some kind of job, because there's an expectation that money will come from the student's pocket. But the worst place to have your money is in the student's name as an asset. Your student has saved 10 grand. That's a great accomplishment, but 10 grand is going to be assessed at 20 to 25% per year and burned down to nothing by the time college is over. Now, as a college, you look at that and say, well, that makes sense. It's the student's education. They're the one going. They should pay for it. But are you, the parent, doing the fiduciary duty of trying to minimize some of that pain there and get the maximum amount of financial aid. So one of the suggestions that I make, this is an easy fix for a lot of families to save potential contribution a little bit, is to move that money over to the parent's name. Have the students gift it back to you, or if it's already in a bank account that has parent's name on there anyway, then you can call it a parent account when you fill out the FAFSA form. But that could save you, drops you from 20 to 25% assessment down to 5%. Yeah. The uniform transfer to minor account is considered a student asset. You can't move it. The only thing you could do is, if you have time, you cash it out, you put it into what's called a custodial 529 account. And once it's in a 529, even though it's custodial, the federal formula counts it as a parent asset.
And then when you cash it out, though, that capital gain is
Yeah, it'll hit the student as a taxable event that year. So it depends on how much is in there. Right?
Because student assets, what is included in student? I mean, just ask about like a car, any, what's?
Their iPhone. I'm just kidding. The assets include bank accounts, cash, checking, savings, UTMA, UGMA. Those are uniform gift to minor custodial accounts.
What about Roth?
Roth IRAs are not considered. So if your student's working, go ahead and start a retirement account. Good way to save some money anyway. It's going to grow nicely. Now, then the Roth is also that's a good question, because a Roth is something students and parents can access without penalty to use to pay for college, if you need to. But keep in mind, that's a retirement account, so you're only robbing from your future, right? Try not to use it. It's there if you need it.
Motor vehicle?
Motor vehicle's not an asset. Unless it's a brand new Land Rover. No. Another thing that doesn't pop up here, but people often ask about, is your primary residence. The federal formula does not count the equity in your primary residence. The institutional formula does count the equity in your primary residence. And I'm going to show you in a case study here how that works. So, this is a family of 4. I calculated the CFC a couple years ago, but it still rings true today. Income, 138. They put away 15 in untaxed income into their retirement accounts, but that's counted by the colleges because it is income they earned that year. They just decided to put it in retirement instead of using it to pay the college. Bad choice, right? Home equity of $500,000. Business, they own a small business. Less than 100 employees, and the family owns the whole business. But there is $500,000 of equity in the business. So when you run the formulas, this creates a very different calculation. Federal formula is about $42,000 a year, but institutional is almost $70,000 a year, because the institutional is expecting the family to tap their home equity and their business equity to pay for college. So what do I say to this? If a family goes through this and discovers this, I say don't apply to colleges that are not treating you right. Just take them off the list. Now don't ask the question, well, what if that's the dream school? No, no, no. You don't want a dream to become a nightmare. This family, by doing this advanced calculation, realized that over 4 years they could save over $100,000 of contribution to college, just by choosing schools that only use the federal formula rather than the institutional formula.
How do you find out what a school uses?
Great segue. How do you find out which schools use the formula? So on the CSS profile, which is on everybody's favorite website, the College Board, you can actually do a drop-down list and pick a school that your student might be looking at to see if it's on there. And if it is, this column here tells you if the profile form is required by that school. The CSS profile form is the form that calculates the institutional methodology. And by the way, the College Board charges you per school to fill out the profile form. How nice of them. All right, so what are some solutions? Well, again, I think affordability has to be your first stop on the road to college. What is affordable for your family? How many children, how many students do you have to educate? How many years do you have to go through this? Know your EFC, the expected family contribution. In a couple of years, it's going to change to the Student Aid Index. That's going to be the new name of it. And it will change a little bit in the formula.
Is there a way to calculate that other than filling in the FAFSA?
Yes. I'll get to that in just a second. But you want to also academically search for schools where your student can be in the top half, if not the top third of the admits. That's typically where they're going to get more money in scholarship coming their way. And lastly, understand the system. What I gave to you tonight was just a brief overview. But here we are in tax year 2022. So if you're a student going to college in 2024, this is your base year for financial aid. Anything your family earns or any transactions you do this year will count on the financial aid forms, because the financial aid forms ask you to do a 2-year look back on income. So if you're a junior and you're going to college in 2023, the tax year that just ended is the tax year the colleges are going to look at. Do not make college the best 7 years of your life. All right, so I put this up here in case anyone has questions for me. But I wanted to open it up to questions. Yes?
If I'm taking a gap year, would I, do you want to actually stop right now or next year and then third, or would you start to do it the year before?
Taking a gap year. Not to put words in your mouths, but when you graduate from high school, it's more difficult, typically, to work with guidance to get the materials you need if you're no longer in the high school system. That's my experience. I don't know if it's the same here, but in general, guidance is working with the seniors heavily on paperwork, grades, etc. So what I usually tell people is if you're planning on a gap year, go ahead and apply to college, get in, pick your top choice, and tell that college you'd like to take a year off. They'll hold a seat for you for a year. That's the best way to do it. Some students will graduate high school, go take a gap year, do something, and then decide later to go to college. And then you do need to work with the high school to get transcripts and other information, perhaps still go back and get some letters of recommendation somehow. I just find that when I'm working with students who've done that, it's been a little more challenging to get the materials after you've already left high school. Yeah?
How does that work with, grants, scholarships with ABC? Does it feature as well, or?
Oh, great question. Yeah, anytime a scholarship is given, and you decide to take a gap year, the scholarship, I've never seen it taken away. They always keep it for you in place for the next year. Grants could be different because that's free money that's based on families' finances. So if your finances change, then the grants could also change from year to year. Yeah. For students who want to go to college overseas, say for example, University of Dublin or Edinburgh, you'd have to look up those school admission pages to make sure you're following exactly what their guidelines are. Some schools are pretty open to inviting international students from the United States. Some are very strict about the materials they need and the grades students need, and you just need to look in advance. So if your student's a junior, now's a great time to be doing the research. But I worked with a student a few years ago who's in her third year at Edinburgh in Scotland. She's loving it. And the cheapest she would have been able to pay, because the family has means, the cheapest she would have paid in the United States to some of the private schools she was looking at was around $50,000 to $55,000 a year. University of Edinburgh is costing that family about $22,000 a year. Hopefully that's not me. Yes, sir.
You were going to talk about the expected family contribution on top of it.
Yes, well, that was that grid of 4 blocks there. You asked how the family contribution is calculated. Oops, right there.
Is there someplace online that we can find that?
Oh, yeah, sorry. On the College Board website, they do have a free calculator that you just need to search EFC calculator. And I think you can get both the federal and the institutional results off of that.
If you use that big future site that Mr. Kazarian mentioned earlier, every time you click on a college, it has a link to, check out your expected family contribution for this college right on there. So you can just click right on that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rachel. And actually, that leads to another point. You might hear the term net price calculator. A net price calculator is not the same as an EFC calculator. It's good to run your EFC first, so you know what your expectations are. And then, on the Big Future website, many colleges will use that to host their net price calculators. But all colleges that take federal money, which is about everybody, is required by law to have a net price calculator on their financial aid webpage somewhere. They might bury it pretty deeply, so you might have to look for it, but it is there. What it allows you to do is plug in family finances, student grades and test scores if available. Sometimes they make you pick a major on there, which, on my soapbox here, I don't believe 18-year-olds should pick, be forced to pick a major. It's too early in life, right? So you can plug those numbers in, and what it does is it spits out cost of attendance minus gifts, grants, and scholarships. So that gives you an idea of what a potential scholarship might look like. There's no guarantees to that being true, but it's going to be pretty close. So net price calculators are good tools to try out and run. Do you have a question? No? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I was just saying that as my personal pet peeve there, but but yes, there are some colleges that do offer larger scholarships for certain majors. For example, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, George Washington University was just starting up a brand new engineering school. And at the time, their maximum merit-based scholarship for all schools was around $18,000 a year. But for the engineering school, it was $24,000 a year. Because they were really trying to draw some high-quality students to build up the name and the reputation quickly of that school. There's a question back there. Difference between weighted and unweighted GPA is going to vary from high school to high school.
What is it?
Some high schools will give extra points if a student takes honors classes, and extra points if you take AP classes. So there could be, the top GPA here would be a 4.0 though, correct? Unweighted, yeah. So at some high schools you might find weighted GPAs of a 5.6. It's not on a 4-point scale because it would have to be on a 6-point scale or something like that. But it changes from high school to high school. Typically what colleges will do, because there are more than 30,000 high schools in this country with different grading systems, when they get your transcript and the school profile, they break down your GPA to an unweighted GPA. So they're recalculating everybody's GPA to get it back onto a 4.0 scale before they review them for admission. That's not every college, but that's what a lot of colleges do. One more question? Okay.
How important is the junior year versus freshman, sophomore year in terms of grades, in terms of what colleges look at?
The question was all about grades and what year is more important than another. And the logical answer is all grades are important all years. The student that one of my colleagues worked with this year had solid B's and A's and applied to a nursing program at Sacred Heart and didn't get in. And when we called to find out what happened, they said the C+ that she had freshman year in biology was why they did not admit her. So different programs are more competitive than others. And if the student has some struggles over time and their grades go up and down, that's okay. But not if you're going into nursing or engineering or something that's a highly selective major at a college. That's where you want to be really cautious. And I think, as Alan said earlier, junior year grades are probably considered to be the most important. You want to finish strong this year because if students are applying to college in November, which is the typical early deadline, colleges don't get to see your fall grades before they're supposed to make a decision. Now, some students apply in November and get deferred to the regular admission pool, which is kind of like the waitlist question you had earlier. They like you, but they need to see a little more information before they say yes or no. So they'll want to see the fall grades. Yeah, good question. Is COVID being taken into account by admissions? The answer is yes. They're all taking into account the past 2 years of craziness and trying to be a little more human in how they're reading applications. However, I would say if students are looking at schools that are of the caliber of Boston College, Brown, some highly selective places, they're not going to be as forgiving, unfortunately.
We have a statement on our profile that talks about grading last year. Remember the last term, everybody got a B or whatever, so it has a statement about performance and, it wasn't a problem, or it hasn't been a problem, has it, for this year's seniors? No. Going back to the unweighted and weighted GPA. So on your transcript, and all students can see this, you will see your current up-to-date cumulative GPA. So that shows where you stand on a 4.0 scale, all right? And so A's are 4s, B's are 3s, and C's are 2s, and so forth. So that's just an unweighted scale. Now we have a weighted class rank, all right? Now I say the word and then I swallow because we don't use class rank, or it's optional. Now if you're sitting here and your school would like your class rank and you feel good about it, then we'll send it, correct? We will send it. We will give it to any student who asks for it. We will tell you your class rank, but it's not a public event. It's not posted on any transcript, and we tell colleges that it's optional reporting. So that's the weighted piece. So that would calculate a difference when students ask, if I took a lot of APs, a lot of honors, and so forth, that would show in your class rank. So if you didn't take a lot of honors and you just had CP and you had all A's, you would have the same unweighted GPA. You with me? Because all the grades are just calculated unweighted. All right? But the difference will show up in a rank. A rank has a lot of connotations to it. The school committee just voted to get rid of it with the incoming freshman class. So we may go to some kind of weighted system or whatever just to keep to calculate that difference. But we send, typically for all juniors, when you're seniors, we just send the unweighted GPA in the transcript. The college has, as Mr. Weaver said, they recalculate it anyway. So you got Falmouth High School, you got Mashpee High School, you got Sandwich High School. Everybody does things a little bit different. So they take all the courses and grades and they list them in their own formula. Who had honors, who had APs, who had, dual enrollment courses and so forth with colleges, and they weight them differently. Am I saying that right? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think what Mr. Kazarian said is the colleges may break down the GPA to a 4.0 schedule, but they're also going to look at the curriculum that was available to your student.
And we design a profile. So Falmouth High School has a profile of all our courses, how they're weighted, what are the options. This is another good point because you mentioned earlier strength of program. All right, so if you were always a student who always stayed at the CP level, I'm sending them a profile that says, well, English department has honors and AP, social studies, math, and so forth, and you always stayed in that middle column. So I have all the columns of how many, and they're checked, how many departments have how many APs, how many honors. So that's another look at when you're looking at strength of program. And this is good going into senior year. So we just did the course selection process, and that's fluid. You can go in and change it and so forth, or you can backtrack away from it. But you don't want to overload yourself. But at the same token, you might, if you can, move up to an honors, maybe next year. Or if you can, maybe move up to an AP. You know what I mean? Just to add another piece of strength to your application package.
Are there any tricks to the trade, in other words, like with regard to some colleges do want you to apply for certain majors, and I know at some colleges, some majors are dying, and some are really, putting aside with nursing, engineering, business programs, there's actually majors that are very popular, and I'm going to assume a little more competitive, and majors that are kind of dying, and I'm wondering if that matters.
Question was, is a college looking at applicants by major? And a lot of the highly selective colleges are doing that. So if you look at the University of Tampa, that has a lot of nursing applicants, business applicants, that's going to be pretty competitive because that's where the high numbers are. But if you wanted to go to Tampa and major in organ music study, you're a shoo-in. Doesn't matter what your grades are, they're going to take you. They only have 2 people in that program.
What's it called?
And these are really great questions for when you go on a college tour. Parents don't ask questions on those tours. Whisper them to your kid. Students ask the questions. Those are really good pieces to get a little bit of a deeper insider information. Instead of just like, how's the food here? What do you do for fun? Ask those types of questions.
The dual enrollment for seniors, how strongly does that affect college acceptance? You're sending applications and before you start the dual enrollment.
So, yeah, but they're going to get the transcripts also. So dual enrollment means you would take classes at Falmouth High School and possibly at Cape Cod Community College or any other state public institution, college. Most of our kids go to 4Cs. So they would get a transcript from the college that would go over to with their application eventually. But initially, they're going to get a schedule. We're going to send the schedule, am I saying that right, with the list of the courses that are duly enrolled. So they're going to look for that later. So that goes in, that probably trumps AP. I don't know. It goes above that level in a way because they're already doing college level work.
So that does.
Yeah. Or it's up at that level.
The only thing I would say is maybe don't apply early just because those grades are not ready yet. Because you're right.
Yes.
They're going to be only getting the grades at the end of the semester. At least at 4Cs, they really didn't create grade progress reports. So I did run into that with a few students that had maybe 1 or 2 dual enrollment classes. Just something to keep in mind. But yes, it's showing that you're prepared for that rigor of college.
Going back to
So
your,
it gives you another level.
going back to your question on the majors, so we have a senior this year who is pretty desperate to go into a very certain college, I'll say, and it's a higher level Reach College. But he did all the research on majors that the school offered, the percent that were in them, the percent accepted, and he went in as that major, as the lowest, it's the most accepted, the most, whatever, you know what I'm trying to say, the most, the least popular, but the
But then once
easiest
you're
fit.
in, you can switch majors.
Exactly,
Most college, yeah.
exactly. So that was his whole logic, right?
But maybe not schools, so.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah,
you might not get into the School of Business, you know what I mean, to
Right.
the Eisenberg
So
School
you're-
of Business at UMass, but you can get into UMass, and then you can work your way.
yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna follow up on that. I think UMass admissions told me 2 years ago that, first of all, if you have grades you're still working on improving, and you need to show off your fall semester grades as a senior, they advise you wait to apply regular decision, because they want to see those grades. You don't want to get rejected early action just because you couldn't show the grades out there. But you're right, another big problem is if you want to go into engineering and you apply to arts and science and say, I'll switch later, that doesn't always happen. You might be stuck in arts and science. I think there's a question in the back there first. Okay.
I was gonna ask, if you apply early decision somewhere, do you get a better chance of getting a merit scholarship?
So if you apply early decision, do you get a better chance of merit? Well, so first of all, just to clarify for everybody, early decision is a binding agreement between the student and one school. They claim that they'll give you the best award possible, but the problem is, if you apply early decision, you're not supposed to be applying to other schools. You can apply early action, you just need to withdraw applications from those schools if you get into the early decision one. But the problem is if you're looking for money, you don't know what your other options could have been. You're not going to see any other scholarship offers or any other admits from any other schools. So early decision has to be a good, strong reason to do it. Early action is when you can apply November 1st, but you don't have to make a commitment until May 1st. But the college will typically get back to you within about 6 weeks, give you an award and an admit and financial aid offer or scholarship offer by then. You may not see the financial aid offer until later on.
With the early action.
With early action, yeah.
Certainly, there's lots of questions, lots of thoughts that go through your mind. We've only just scratched the surface. We certainly encourage you to, and your children to go out to college campuses. All right, so unfortunately, the last couple of years, the students weren't able to do that. Colleges are opening up again. Colleges are welcoming tours and people on campus. And April vacation is typically a good time when students are on campuses, and you can go in and you can tour them and see the students and see the dorms and see the food services and so forth, and ask questions in these kind of forums. And they will take small groups, and you'll see them listed on the websites of colleges that you're interested in. So if we look at a calendar, we could almost look at, wow, and in 6 months I'm going to be a senior, to the students, wow. But then again, we can look and say, wow, we have 6 months that we can work on picking a college. And I think that's what we're kind of gearing our students up to do, is to spend the next 6 months to get ready, looking at, investigating, researching, so that when you come back to school in September as a senior, you can sit with your guidance counselor, you can go on to Naviance, and all seniors have to list colleges I'm applying to. And that needs to be done by October, usually by the end of October. So there's 2 ways of looking at what kind of timeline we have going forward. And so we encourage you to get out there, to use Naviance, do at-home searches, online, look at websites, read about things, read about the information that was presented tonight on finances, read about the admissions requirements that Ms. Payne talked about. Think about, do I need to take a test or not? And maybe I don't even have to take an SAT, but maybe I do. And so a lot of that is information that you will do as part of your research. So there's a lot to this. We will follow up with parents. So we have a night in September that we're going to invite you to come back as seniors, and we're going to walk you through all of the steps that you're going to take to apply and how we're going to help you do that and get it done. So you've heard some deadlines. Early decision means I've absolutely found one school. I'm going to go with it. It's probably going to be due November 1st. Early action will mean I just want to apply early and hopefully find out early. I don't have to commit. So you're going to hear those names. Then there's regular decision. I'll just do it when I get to it. But hopefully the goal is to have every senior apply to a college by Christmas time. by that break, is that correct?
I tell my students, September comes and we hit the ground running.
Okay.
So any work that you can do now, any of that legwork to start looking at schools, start exposing yourself to different names that are out there, the better.
Yeah, exactly. Go
Can
ahead.
students go to guidance, Alan, and do the virtual tours? Because I heard a lot, most of the colleges at least have virtual tours.
They can do it with us, yeah, absolutely, yeah. During Clipper time, we'll set them up.
Do you guys have like, do you have any idea how good the virtual, do you have any feedback as to what schools have great virtual, virtual tours
The
versus?
virtual tours, during COVID, with so many colleges closed down completely, I think the virtual tours have really improved greatly. So, yeah, I would definitely check those out.
Yeah, but they can come and do it with us. I don't offer a viewing of it, but, go ahead.
The college essay.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, you were talking about doing stuff like before September, but do the English classes work? So can you just tell us the timeline of that?
Oh, you're gonna make me promise things I don't know. I will say that it is first semester, for sure. I would say first quarter, very likely that they're working on the college essays. Now that's to say that you don't have to commit.
I'm gonna trump you. It's the end of junior year, I believe, isn't it?
Is it?
It's
I
fourth
know that
quarter.
some of the senior
I think it's,
classes did, yeah.
So maybe they start a little early.
yeah, they're gonna start with, but you can go on commonapp.org, and you can look at the prompts, the essay prompts. But yeah, the English department is definitely, I believe, fourth quarter.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And they don't have to use that one. So looking at the prompts was going to be my next thing. Like definitely try to find those and feel free to be kind of creative with them and make sure that it's your student's voice.
But the student has to choose one of those prompts.
Or a essay of their choosing, essentially, is the last prompt is always tell us
You're
your own thing.
gonna see like is there like 5 or
It's like
6 of
6 or 7 of them.
yeah.
And do certain colleges have other essays that you have to write, so you just have to?
Yeah, some have their own applications as well.
Okay.
I'm just gonna ask a quick question to parents who've been through this process. Can you give me any advice? Parents who have been through this.
I mean, for me, it was early action made a lot of sense because I thought that the acceptance rate was a little higher and it made the holidays and senior year much easier to have a child accepted before winter break, or at least have some acceptances before winter break. Maybe not the financial aspect, but I think it took a lot of pressure off the kids.
All right, so doing early action was a positive. Not early decision, but early action.
Early action.
Yeah, to try to get them done early. And the early action deadlines could be November 1st, November 15th, December 1st, December 15th. So there's some various dates that will come in play. And you'll see that information. You had a question? You felt you were out of the line with the scholarships?
Yeah, because of COVID,
So we email every month, we email a list of scholarships to all the parents. So we started that, I thought last year, and you should have hopefully gotten that. But anyway, we have definitely done it this year. So all the scholarships that are due, we post them, and then all the seniors are invited to go through a scholarship workshop so that they understand how to access them through Naviance. It is our hope. We have averaged around $480,000 to $500,000 in scholarship dollars. So there's a lot of money that will go out to seniors, and that is the most exciting night. And we're excited that this year we will be back in person at awards night, where the students will come and stand on this very stage, and we'll read their name will be called. They will come up and read all the scholarships they get and all the money that they get, and you kind of mentally calculate and say, wow, some students have walked off the stage with $20,000, $30,000. But that takes a little bit of work and effort too, just like it does applying for colleges, you know what I mean? Just like it does doing research, but it's worth it in the end. So we'll end with the important point that we're going to stand by you, and I'm certainly available as the director, and certainly your counselor is available to meet with you. You want to come in after school, you want to come in before school, not before school, but early in the mornings, 7:30. The counselors are here on your way to work or whatever. We'll be happy to sit down with you. Or anytime along the way you have a question, just shoot an email and we'll be happy to answer them. I'm sorry, did I miss your question?
How long approximately are like the general college essays? How long do they have between
How long do they take to write and tweak it, or how many
How
words?
long is the essay? Are they 500-word essays?
One page.
600 words, I think?
Yeah,
600?
Yeah.
650.
650?
Max.
And where did that rank? I did take a picture of your list about how important, you had like 20 things, right?
You're not gonna wanna hear this, but
Okay.
The essay is way down?
essay can be way down. A good essay isn't gonna make or break an application, but a bad essay will have a bad outcome.
Is it true that they only spend like 9 minutes looking at each application or something like that?
About, the average is 7 to 8 minutes to read an application.
It's about the numbers.
Yeah.
But you know what, if you're in a committee, and just from the conversations that, with the reps that have come to our college fair, I love this event, and hopefully many of you, the students here, talk to representatives, but they tell us as well, sometimes it comes down to, okay, I have all of these young ladies, and I can only take 1 or 2, you know what I mean, and who am I gonna take, you know what I mean, among this group? And it may be the student who's reached out to me, it may be the student who I've become familiar with, it may be the student who I want to advocate for because of their seriousness of purpose, or because of their enthusiasm, because of we've been in touch and we've communicated, we've interviewed, we've conversed. That could be the difference, and that's what we're hearing. Am I saying that right? Okay.
Demonstrated interest?
Demonstrated interest. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. If you want to stick around, we're here. If you want to come down and ask another question, that we did. Thank you.